Alrighty, so today I had my patrons, this is a patron voted, drawn out, and I had them vote, and they actually got a tie again. I had to flip a coin again, because you guys keep giving me ties to pick from. But yeah, the winner of the coin flip is me redesigning the girls from Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School. So, if you don't know, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School is, it's a movie, and it's really old, like it's one of the earliest Scooby-Doo movies. You could tell because Shaggy's wearing a red shirt in it. So it's pretty ancient. And basically, what the plot is that Shaggy, with Scooby accompanying him, gets hired to be, a gym teacher for an all-girls boarding school. But turns out that the girls are all monsters. But they actually end up being pretty cool, and then they run around and have fun, and then there's also, like, a spider witch who causes a little bit of trouble, and then they defeat her, and that's the movie. It's like 40 minutes long. and it barely gets to that runtime. Like, it struggles to get even that. It's a pretty aimless and plotless movie. I like Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School well enough, but I can't in good conscience say it's actually a good movie. Like, I enjoy it, but it's not good. But yeah, so what I'm doing is I'm redesigning the ghouls of the school, because this was made in, like, the 80s, like the early 80s, late 80s actually, and so all their designs really suck. They're all really boring. And so I'm redesigning them, because that sounded fun. So, let's take a second to talk about each girl and how I've gone about redesigning them. So we're gonna start with, Elsa Frankenteen, who's here in the center. So, what I did for her was, I wanted to think about, like, when they would all actually, like, when they would be born, you know? Like, you know, because vampires live for, like, eternity, you know, and everything, and there's a ghost girl, when did she die? And so that was kind of, like, how I approached the topic, was when did these girls, when were they born? And I wanted to fashion them off of that, because you could get a lot of really fun variety that way. And Elsa, she's interesting, because I technically have her as the quote-unquote youngest, in that since she's a Frankenstein-esque monster, she wouldn't be born, she would be created, and so I assumed she would be made, like, when the movie came out. So I fashioned her off of 1988 fashion, because that's when the movie came out. Which was a lot of fun, because I think it was an easy way to sort of translate Elsa's kind of just like grubby overshirt into overalls, which were pretty hip back then. She was really fun. I think, honestly, of the redesigns, I think she might be my favorite, but also, I just really like Elsa. I think she's neat. But next, we'll talk about the vampire girl, who's right here, that I'm drawing right now. So her name is Sabella, and so what I did was I looked up when Dracula was, like, written, and that was in 1897. So I used 1897 fashion, and I tried to modernize it for all the other girls who would, like, be from, like, different centuries or whatever. I wanted to still kind of pseudo-modernize the outfits, because they're hip girls. They would want to still look fashionable despite, you know, being from a different century. Which is interesting with Sabella, because it started out very much like I was working with this 1897 era of fashion, but by modernizing it actually kind of just transformed into, like, 90s, like with the padded shoulders, you know, 90s sort of look, which isn't bad. You know, Sabella strikes me as the kind of girl who would be into that kind of powerful women work-in 90s fashion anyway. So I think it worked out really well. Next is, we've got Winnie, the werewolf right here. I always liked her a lot too. I think she's really fun. So I looked up when like the first werewolf story was, and it was kind of tough to find a definitive answer on that. But what I came to the conclusion of was that it was in the 1860s. So she's one of the older girls. I think Winnie's tons of fun, but it was actually pretty hard because, so the fashion of the 1860s is really covered up. Like the dress I had working with for my reference, like, had really long sleeves and, you know, like a floor-length dress. And I think that's a really cute look, but I also wanted to keep Winnie's furry limbs still visible, because that's kind of important, because since she's a werewolf, she's got these like really hairy arms and legs, and that felt important to represent, to show off still. And so for a minute there, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I'll put her in 1860s boys fashion. But one, I think it's still pretty covered up, and two, you know, even though Winnie she's one of the more tomboyish of the girls, you know, she's enthusiastic about sports and, you know, she's less typically girly than the others. But she still wears a dress, like, in the canon version of her, she's still wearing her dress, and it's like, you know what? Tomboys can like wearing dresses too. So I decided to roll with it and just basically shorten all the sleeves, which makes it, and the dress too, which makes it very not accurate. Like, she's the one who deviates from her timeline, like her era, the most, but I didn't care, because I felt like being able to see her furry limbs was more important than choosing to stay too accurate to the fashion that I assume werewolves originate from. Next, we're going to talk about Phantasma. That's the ghost girl who's floating here. So she's got, I think her design's the best from the original movie. I think she's got a really cute design, and I like the shape and cut of her dress, and she just looks really cute. So I don't end up changing her a whole lot, but I do end up giving her a little bit of accessories and sort of spiffing up her boots a bit. What I decided on for her was that she died in the Roaring 20s, so I used like flapper dresses as the reference for her, because I liked this sort of like shapeless, like just straight down box shaped dress that was kind of similar to what Phantasma actually wears. The thing is though, so Phantasma's got this really sort of like pretty iconic, very cute hairstyle, which is so not the 1920s. It's really not the flapper look at all. But I figured that's okay, because what I decided was that since she's got this really cool hairstyle as well, and she's really quirky, so of all the girls, I think Phantasma would be the one who like incorporates more generations fashion as she goes, because she's been dead for a long time now. And specifically, I figured she'd get really into the punk rock scene to have that cool haircut, like the 1970s punk rock scene, which is also where I got her spiffy, cool new version of shoes. So yeah, I think that's a really fun idea, just in general, like regardless of it being connected to Phantasma or not, like a ghost having to deal with the differences in fashion as they go. I think that's cute. Small side note, I gave Winnie a tail here. I couldn't remember if she had a tail, because the reference image I grabbed didn't show that, and I couldn't be bothered to look it up as I was drawing, because I didn't care, and I wanted her to have a cute tail. But finally, let's talk about the fashion of our final girl, and it's Tannis. Tannis is the cutest. She's like portrayed as the youngest, even like in the movie. And that's cute, because she's a mummy, which means she's actually the oldest, because it's like ancient Egypt stuff. I like Tannis a lot. I think she's really fun. But she's also the one who I end up redesigning the most. Because I wasn't jiving a whole lot with her just wearing bandages. I think it works really well for the original movie. They stylize it really cool. I like it a lot. But I wasn't into it. I didn't want her clothes to just be like mummy wrappings fashioned to look like a dress. So yeah, she ends up changing the most because I actually do put her in, I looked up classic Egypt clothes. I hope it's accurate. And they were very cute. I like them a lot too. And you know, she's one of the more difficult ones to have done for this, just because I felt like incorporating all the little details in the fashion was important. But it was fun, so who cares? It was a fun challenge to make sure I get her necklace to look right. So yeah, I'm really proud of the girls and what I decided to do with all of them. And now here's the thing about the art. Gonna finally talk about the picture, actually. So if you pay attention, because, you know, I always film, like I record my screen in a way so that you can always see what my layers are doing, what color I'm working with, and also you can always see my brushes. Because that's the thing, you know, I've definitely watched, like, speed paints like this before, and desperately tried to, like, figure out what brush they're using, because so few people actually reply if you leave a comment being like, what brush is this? Or what settings are you using? They don't often actually reply. And so, you know, I always try to make sure that you can see all of that, just in case you like how something turns out, and it's like, that brush looks cool, I want to do that. Tangent aside, if you pay attention to my layers over on the right, you will see that I keep everything for Phantasma. So her line art and her colors, I keep it all on their own layers. All the other girls' line art and all their colors, they're all put together. Phantasma stays independent from them because she's a ghost. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the opacity of only her layers in order to make her look a little transparent. Just a fun little trick for you there. If you're working digitally, excellent. That means ghosts are really, really easy. This is something I learned to do like 1 billion years ago for my first webcomic that I ever did, because I had a ghost in it. So, yeah, easy peasy. Just make sure you keep your ghost stuff on its own layer, and you'll be able to have your ghosts be transparent, and it'll be super fun. That's the pro tip right there. More on the topic of the kind of just the picture as a whole. I'm annoyed. So, because, okay, there's an artist called Plague of Gripes. You probably have heard of him if you know about the Super Best Friends. Plague of Gripes is actually where I kind of got the idea to redesign the Ghoul School girls, because he's got like a little mini-series he had done where he had done that. And I hadn't looked at his art for a long time, because, you know, it was just fine, whatever. But I did want to make sure that I hadn't accidentally, like, basically done any of the things he had done in his redesign for the girls. So I looked up what his, like, version of them all looked like after I was done with my picture. And, yeah, nothing, too out of the ordinary for the designs, like, I didn't inadvertently steal any design ideas from him, but what I did accidentally do was I did put them in, like, the same composition. I'm so annoyed that it's, like, the same layout of picture. It's not the hardest, like leap to have gotten there. Like, it's 5 girls, and the idea is to see all their designs, and so it makes sense to basically just line them up like this. But I am annoyed about it. But I guess the tip I'd like to pass on to you in order to share what I've learned as an artist is that, yeah, that's going to happen. Someone will draw something very similar to you, you will draw something very similar to someone else. And that doesn't mean either of you have, like, stolen the idea or anything. It's just that sometimes this happens. Sometimes you accidentally make the same composition as another artist, because that's just how it works sometimes. here's a good example of like, see how Phantasma is gone now, she's just not here. You'll see her kind of come and go a lot, and you'll also see me get rid of the other girls as I work on her. It's mostly just because I don't want her like getting in my way, because I would get lost. I would forget that I need to keep her on her own layer. So yeah. Also, this stage that I'm in, where I'm filling in the girls so I can have my masking layer. I'm gonna cut most of this out soon. You'll see that, there we go, now they're all colored. So the reason why I did that was because I was going forward, I was doing that, and it was taking a whole eternity. And all I needed to do, it was just like half an hour of me finding where the lines weren't closed, and then closing them and filling in the colors. And it was boring and asinine, and I was like, they don't need to see this. No one needs to see this. This isn't interesting. This isn't the cool part of the art. Let's just jump to the part where I get to have fun colors, and they don't have to sit through that. So there you go. I've done this for you. So yeah, that's why. This is fun. So the coloring was tons of fun because I didn't have to think. So because I was taking colors from like the screenshots from the actual show. I didn't want to tweak their colors too much. The only major exceptions are Sabella, the vampire, and Tannis, because I changed them the most. Like Sabella especially, like her dress is in the actual movie it's just one long purple dress, and suddenly I've given her a lot more layers to work with. So it was figuring out how to color her in without it looking too busy and too different from the original, because I still wanted it to be like, that's clearly Sabella. And then Tannis, because I've given her just a completely new look. The hair was a lot of fun. I really liked doing these like streaks in the hair for all the different girls. But yeah, so Tannis was a lot of fun. I used the red of her bow as like a primary idea, because that was all I really had to work with. A fun little bonus fact about Elsa, the Frankenstein girl, is that I gave her 2 slightly different colored eyes because she's put together. and I think that's something, I may have definitely ganked that idea from Monster High, but I think it's a great idea. Like, if you have a Frankenstein monster-esque character, give them different colored eyes. I didn't want it to be too extreme, because again, I wanted it to not be too different from the canon version. But yeah, just 2 slightly different shades of green. Fun stuff. That's another thing. This is not, now we're just talking about general art, but I think it's a lot of fun when characters have heterochromia, but they're not like wildly different colors anyway. Spike Spiegel is the only example I can think of, and it's very, very subtle. But it's always fun seeing the just like, one yellow eye and one pink eye or whatever it is. Those are fun too. I like that plenty. But I think there's an untapped market on just like slightly different heterochromia. But that's just me. But, take that information and make art with it if you'd like. Another fun thing. So in the actual cartoon, Sabella's hair is stupid. her just the top being this lighter purple, and then the rest of it being this deeper purple. She looks so dumb. she looks so dumb. I don't know why they did this. It looks bad. And so at first I thought about like giving her fancy like streaks or something in her hair, kind of like how I've done for Elsa and also Phantasma. But because I think variety is cool, and I thought that this would look better anyway, that's why I instead opted for the ombre look here that she does end up having, because I think just a fade from light purple to dark purple is better than just the top of her head being this different color dumbly. Of all the clothes, I think Elsa's was my favorite to color in, even though these bracelets were a bit of a pain in the ass. Just because she had a very easy color palette to work with. You know, I didn't want to stray too far away from the greens and blue that she's got, because her canon version is just like her ugly shirt, and then another ugly shirt over that, and then a purple sash. Or blue sash, excuse me. So yeah, it was just easy to sort of like adapt all of that into a full outfit for her, and it was very fun. You're gonna see me kind of like wander around colors a lot with Sabella, because like I mentioned, I suddenly had a whole lot more to do with her than the show had given me to work with. These silvers, I liked the idea of it being silver, like in her clothes. But it was too similar to her skin tone, so it's gonna change to gold. I liked the idea of silver, because, you know, silver is, like, connected to werewolf and vampire lore, but yeah, it was just too similar to her skin tone. It was just looking too weird, which is, I guess, the hazards of having a vampire with ashen gray skin. Weirdly purple skin. But I am happy with how she turns out. It was a bit of a puzzle, because sometimes doing art can be like a real thought process. But I am happy with the result. So it's all worth it in the end. Another thing I'm happy about with Winnie, and jumping back to fading colors, is because in the cartoon she's, you know, her paws and like her feet are just this darker brown color. Like it's like she's got sleeves made out of fur. But that looked really like abrupt. I don't know, it was looking too like stiff that way. So just an easy peasy solution. I just made it fade to the darker brown on her sleeves. That's another pro tip I've got for you. Does something look like it happens too abruptly? Just add a fade. You know, if you're stuck on something, give it a small gradient. Even if that isn't the solution, it's very often can be. So there you go. Just when in doubt, does a gradient work? I had her with a much Tannis. We're talking about Tannis now. I had her in a much more vibrant red at first, because I liked how bright the red bow was, but it was looking like too much. Like, everyone else are in these like muddy colors, and I didn't want Tannis to stand out by being in like a really vibrant red, so I muddied her down a little bit, which is good because this is more of the palette I'm used to. I don't often work with like very vibrant or saturated colors personally. So yeah, I really like how Tannis came out. This necklace was a lot of fun to work on, and I think the outfit is just super duper cute. It's way cuter than the just bandaged dress that they gave her in the cartoon, and I'm really happy that I took the risk to be brave and try my hand at classic Egyptian fashion, because it worked out really well. Back on the topic of faded colors, you may have noticed that I also faded out Winnie's dress as well, because I started out with a much more vibrant shade of blue on her as well, but it was looking too weird. It wasn't jiving. Sometimes having a character be like more saturated than the rest of the characters in the image can help. That can make it makes someone stand out. So if the goal is to like make your hero like really pop, or to make someone look like an outsider, that can work. But yeah, these are just the things that it's good to keep in mind when you're doing art, is especially if you're doing a bunch of characters all together, do they look like they go together? And just kind of color tone can play a big part in that. Phantasma's colors were a lot of fun, because she's basically monochrome, because I didn't want to, since she's dead, you know, she's just a spirit, so I got the idea that, like, everything on her would be, like, just part of the ghost that she is. Like, I don't know, I guess kind of like this, like, you know, ghosts are always just, like, white sheets kind of a thing. So I liked the idea of Phantasma, you know, donning clothes and them always matching her ghostly color palette. So it was really fun and really easy, and while I'm pretty happy with all of them. They all turned out pretty cool, and I think they all convey their characters really well. It's tough to pick a favorite, but Phantasma's pretty up there. Here's something I don't do often, a detailed background, and what's more weird is that I'm doing it before I shade the girls. I also use a whole lot of brushes at this stage. I'm trying to be painterly, because I can't do, like, environments without it being in, like, a painted style. It's just how my brain works. It's because I learned how to do them by watching Bob Ross. It's just the way it is. So that meant me kind of going through a whole lot of different brushes and trying to add texture and color and shading where I needed it. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It did make everything load really slowly though, which is why it all just went away right there. I'm just hiding it while I work on their shadows because I needed to be able to save without it taking like a whole 2 minutes to save, because it took my computer a while to process all the brush textures in the image suddenly. We're doing some pretty deep shading. So right now it's really dark. That's just so I can see it, since they do have so many dark colors on them. Yeah, since I made the background first, that meant I knew where the light source was. The moon is behind them, and I think this like really deep, heavy shading is fun and fits the spooky-esque vibe really cool. It's like this could be the first thing Shaggy and Scoob see when they get to the boarding school. So yeah, really fun. I don't often have the excuse to work with these like really heavy shading and like backlit stuff. You know, I say that as if I'm not in charge of my own art. I suppose I could just be shading things from behind more often if I wanted to. That's another pro tip I'm gonna just throw out there. You pick what you draw. Don't let anyone put you in a box. But yeah, I'm not usually doing these really heavy shading, like, pictures. So it's a lot of fun, because it means you have to think about the picture in a different way. Because if you shade something pretty consistently, like, there's always conveniently light, just vaguely in front of the character, so, you end up shading things really consistently. That's cool, nothing wrong with that. But it does mean it can become sort of force of habit, and changing the light source can force you to think about, like, shape and structure again. So yeah, just a fun way to keep you on your toes, just in case you're worried that art was getting too easy. Another fun thing about this you'll notice is that Phantasma does not cast shadows. She doesn't have one on the floor, and there will be none of this heavy shading on her, because she's a ghost. And so she has no physical form. This was a lot of fun, having to think about, like, how the light would affect the girls, and, stuff like how much of, like, because Winnie's eyes are fully exposed within the shading, because, like, dog eyes reflect light, meanwhile Elsa's don't, because she's got just human eyes, and they wouldn't reflect light like that. It was a lot of fun. I think the shading layer, while more work than usual, just because I had to, like, really think about what I was doing for once, it ended up being really fun. So that's another thing. Sometimes art can feel like it'd be a challenge. Like, oh, doing that sounds hard. But it can end up being, like, just fun. That's the thing. Art should be fun. That's the #1 rule. Always make sure you're having fun. I mean, if you're doing it for class, your assignments aren't always going to be the most exciting thing. If you're doing it for a commission, it might not be the most exciting thing. But when you're doing art for yourself, you should be doing it because you want to. And so yeah, I think, make sure you're having fun, and sometimes experimenting with how you do art can be a fun new thing. Like picking up a new video game, or opening up a new puzzle. But yeah, now we're entering the final stages where I put all the layers back in and I make the shadows look good. I felt like they stood out a little bit too much from the background at this point, so I add more shading to them, which, again, Phantasma still doesn't cast. Very cool, very fun. I'm really happy with how this turned out. The final thing here is just more like darkness, making the forest look like it has some depth, something resembling dimension, and then a little bit of like ghost shine for Phantasma, so that she really looks like it's like, wait, hang on, she's dead. Hang on, that one's a ghost. But yeah, I'm super duper happy with how this came out. Yeah, let me know which one is your favorite design, and which one's your favorite just like from the movie, if you've seen it. And let me know what your favorite Scooby-Doo movie is. But yeah, hope I have a spooky October for Halloween coming up.